I'm James Rule. Welcome to the Lonely Leader podcast, where we help existing and aspiring leaders find clarity, build resilience, drive performance, and enhance fulfillment. What did my enough is enough moment teach me, and how did I redesign my leadership? That's the focus of today's episode, and it builds on the back of my recent episode linked in the show notes around the need to continually redesign leadership. Now, it's my aspiration that we do that proactively, and we do that as we evolve into more and more senior leadership positions. Unfortunately, as it was in my case, sometimes external factors force us into that redesign. And I talk about my enough is enough moment as a time when, unfortunately, I collapsed early one morning on my bathroom floor, mobile phone in hand, on my way to checking the next email, only to be picked up and brought around by my wife and ended up in hospital. I've talked about it in previous episodes, but that was a pivotal enough is enough moment that forced me to reflect on, how did I get here as a young man in my 30s? Why am I collapsing with something that I believed was only relevant to elderly people? And the reality is, I put myself there by running myself into the ground, by working unsustainable hours, thinking that I was indestructible. And eventually, whilst I might have been mentally comfortable with what I was doing, my body said, enough's enough. And in that intervening period, in that period where I was forced to have 2 weeks off work, where my mobile phone was taken away by the doctors and they instructed my wife to lock the phone away in a safe so that I couldn't touch it, I was able to reflect. I was able to answer those questions. And now, with the benefit of hindsight, whilst it wasn't a pleasant experience, I am grateful that I was forced into that leadership redesign. And today I just want to touch on some of the core aspects that I changed as a consequence of that reflective period that made me, I believe, a much better, higher performing, and certainly more fulfilled leader. In my last couple of podcast episodes, I've talked about the need to redesign your leadership style, or that the situations you find yourself in will often redesign you. I've also talked about what leaders regret not taking action and decisions on sooner. And no surprise, you'll have heard me say this a lot of the subject matter is based on my own personal lived experience, but also the insights and perspectives given to me by the clients that I work with. And a lot of people connected, talked about how much those episodes resonated, and were asking about my relevant period. So I'm very mindful that not everybody finds the podcast and works through the catalogue from episode 1. And for those of you that have gone through the entire catalogue, I apologise for some brief repetition here, but my key learning, my redesign, as I said at the start of this episode, came about from collapsing with pneumonia. I was going through the cycle. I was in denial. Let me get back to work. Then I was frustrated. I haven't got time for this. I've got too much to do. Then came those reflective moments of calm and an acceptance that something had to change. So if I talk about regrets, well, one of the regrets would be, how did I get myself into that position? And why did I not make changes sooner? However, let's look at it from a positive lens. Every experience is a learning opportunity, and I certainly learned the hard way that there is a better way to work. So I'm mindful of the fact, as I said, that not everybody's gone through the entire catalogue. So I just want to signpost through this episode to some of the archive material, some of the previous episodes, because you will see a dotted line coming back from a lot of those into this pivotal experience in my leadership journey. And my aspiration of today's episode is that we all find the time to reflect, to pause, and where necessary, course correct how we're operating as leaders, as human beings, as men and women, so that we do not find ourselves clattering into our own enough is enough moment, that we can course correct in advance. As I always say, I'm a big advocate of accelerated learning, of looking at people's experience that have walked the path ahead of you, avoiding the pitfalls they stumbled into, and jumping onto the shortcuts, the hacks that they found to move forward with a higher level of performance and fulfillment. So, in no particular order, I would point you back to episode 84. That's around clarity. Sounds so easy, but the harsh reality in my experience, and certainly in the experiences of the people I'm coaching, which, as you hear me say regularly, is the second and more important source of my content creation. Yes, my lived life experience is a foundation of it, but what I'm seeing day in, day out that leaders are wrestling with around the world is a key influence in what I bring to you through this podcast. So the need for clarity, absolutely fundamental. If we don't know where we are, where we're trying to get to, how on earth can we build a roadmap to get there? So I think episode 84 around clarity, very important. Taking you all the way back in the archive to episode 2. In that, I talk about the need for a holistic overview for high performance. The purpose of these signpostings is to stop me trying to condense all of the insights into this episode, which is impossible. But in a nutshell, that episode highlights the need to look beyond just our professional role, to look at our physical health, our mental health, our connectivity with friends, extended family, our presence with our partner, with our children if we have them, the need to stay engaged with passions and hobbies. All of this will indirectly enhance how you perform as a professional. So for those of you saying, I haven't got time for that, you have to make the time. I'd encourage you to listen to that, to look at the merits and the power of truly taking a holistic overview into your high performance. If we're going to get the best out of ourselves, we have to recover. I often use that analogy about elite, high-performing sportsmen and women. They compete with intensity, they train with intensity, but there is mandated periods of rest and recovery. That is an accepted part of extracting the best level of performance and sustaining that. Now, when we step into industry, sweeping generalization, that is often not the case. People are working flat out at their core skills, at their day job, with limited or no focus on how they mentally and physically recover. So I'd encourage you to listen into episode 54, where I talk about recovery, the 7 types of rest, and how you can embrace that to enable you to recharge, to clear out some of that mental stress, clear it out of you physically and mentally so that you can truly optimize your performance and sustain it over the longer term. When I look back with the benefit of hindsight, I can see how little focus I had on recovery. And there was a key warning sign. And this is a warning sign that I see the alarm bell ringing on time and time again when I work with leadership groups and individual leaders. And that is the concept of holiday illness. It's so important to me that I did a huge standalone episode on this, episode 71, because it is a red flag. If you invariably become ill when you take a holiday, that is an early warning sign that you are not recovering effectively and that you are at risk of doing yourself some sort of damage through burnout. There is a scientific reason why we get sick when we're on holiday. It is because we are flooding our body with the stress hormone cortisol. We are in a constant state of fight. We've heard of that fight, flee, freeze, flight syndrome. Where we're in a state of fight. Our body's pumped full of cortisol. We're running on that as a source almost of fuel. When we stop work, when we take a holiday and that source of stress is removed, those stress hormones stop flowing, and it demonstrates that our immune system is compromised, and therefore we succumb to bugs, to viruses, and invariably are sick over our holiday. So again, might not resonate with everybody, but I can look back when I was in that reflective period after collapsing with pneumonia, and almost without fail, I could see the pattern of sickness, irrespective of when the holidays came, summer, Easter, Christmas. That is when my body would break down. So if you are reflecting now and thinking, that's me, that often happens to me, please tune in to episode 71 and listen to the insights on avoiding holiday illness. As I was recovering from the pneumonia, one of the things that took place, not immediately, obviously respecting my need for some rest, but very soon after those first few days, 2 of my fellow directors reached out to me and staged an almost intervention. They came to visit me at my home and they insisted really, that I become more effective at delegation. that they felt I was taking on too much and that there were more than enough people and resources that could help if only I would open up a little bit, share some of the challenges that I was dealing with, and rather than trying to protect the staff from that, share the challenge and find ways to delegate things off my plate. There was another dotted line into this around communication. And rather than trying to be relentlessly optimistic to a fault, they felt there was a benefit to actually highlight some of the seriousness of what was going on so that everybody was fully aware and therefore could step up accordingly rather than sort of drifting along saying, well, all is well because ignorance is bliss. So where does this take me? Well, I've done an episode 11 all around delegation. It's something that practically all of us struggle with at some point, some more than others, but high performers often trip over that, well, nobody can do it better than me, so I'm going to do it myself. And even if they can do it better than me, they need training, and I haven't got time for that training, so we keep circling back to, I'll just do it myself. That works in the short term, but it massively compromises us in the longer term. So for any of you reflecting on that challenge of delegation, please pop back and have a listen to episode 11. Loneliness is something I speak about. It's the very essence of the lonely leader. It's in the brand, it's in our organizational name. Why? Well, I see lots of leaders creating a sense of isolation and loneliness, not because that's how they want to operate, but the software needs an update. They've moved into this space where I need to have all the answers. I need to know what to do. I shouldn't unload any of my challenges on people around me. I need to be relentlessly positive. So they are very noble, they are outwardly focused, looking after their staff, looking after their stakeholders, but completely neglecting their own growth and development needs. And that becomes quite a lonely and isolating place. And I drifted into that at times during my leadership tenure. And that inability to offload or develop any sort of support network was probably a contributing factor to that punch of pneumonia striking me down. So episode 103 is all about breaking down that isolation and loneliness of leadership and developing the right support networks that can help you reach your potential, but particularly so sustain you and support you in those challenging periods of adversity that every leader has to deal with at some stage or another. Another key reflection that dawned on me during my recovery from the illness was I'd stepped away from learning. What do I mean by that? Well, I have a real need. It's one of my top human needs. For any of you that are familiar with the 6 human needs, growth and progress is something that is very important to me, and I fuel that need through learning, whether that's courses, reading, podcasts, etc. And this is a theme I see with a lot of leaders because we've got so much to do, because there is a never-ending to-do list, endless call lists, email lists, meeting lists. Things have to give. And one of the things that I'd not been aware of, but became consciously aware of, was I'd stopped that learning process. Those habits, even as simple as reading, listening to podcasts, had become parked because there was always something else I needed to do. So a key reflection of mine was I need to just pick up a book again. It's a key part of the learning, but it's also a key part in mental recovery, being able to switch off from some of those day-to-day challenges. And of course, when we switch off out of left field, pop into our head some of the best ideas. So part of my redesign was building reading back into my morning and evening routine so that helped drive my mental recovery, but also fuel that human need for growth and progress. So episode 86 is all about the power of continuous learning, and I expand on that point a little bit more in that episode. The next episode I want to signpost you to is episode 48, all about the leadership essential of presence. It transcends our leadership into every role we occupy. Most of the people I speak to at some point express a frustration at the lack of presence, whether that's in their professional role or their personal life. There is nothing more disempowering to the people we are with than being physically present but not truly present, looking through them, looking over the shoulder, looking at our phone, or just that 1,000-yard stare. We are there, but we're thinking about our next meeting, a conversation that happened earlier in the day. People spot it, our children will spot it, our partner will spot it, our colleagues and our staff all spot it, and it just disempowers them. It erodes that connectivity between us. So it's a non-negotiable for me. We need to rewire ourselves and we need to be fully present, even if only for a few minutes. We can't multitask if we want to get the best out of our loving personal relationships and also our professional relationships. So presence, and this episode is my attempt to give you the reflection points and insights to help you in what is a non-negotiable life essential. If we do it well, it fills our energy, it fills our proverbial cup. If we do it badly, it does the exact opposite. So I don't think there are many things more important to us as human beings that transcend every role we conduct than finding a way to be consistently present with everybody we are engaged with. I talk a lot with clients about being mindful of who we are interacting with, be mindful of the people we are spending time with. Are they boosting our energy or are they draining our energy? And we've all heard that adage that we are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. So let's try and curate a situation where those people enhance us, enhance our energy, help us grow, help us develop, support us through adversity, and cheer us on in times of success. Naturally, there is always a challenge to that because curation is relatively easy in our personal networks, friends, extended family, etc. But it's often very, very challenging in our professional circle because we cannot dictate who we do and do not integrate with and have relationships with. So on that theme, it led me to develop an episode number 34, about dealing with negative people, because negative people will come at us from a variety of sources. How we deal with them is important, and how we protect ourselves from absorbing all of that negativity is critical if we want to sustain high levels of performance and keep our mindset in an empowered, positive state. So if that's something that you're having to wrestle with at the minute, you find yourself dealing with a lot of negative people, please do check that episode out and see how it resonates with you. Challenges are constant for every leader. It comes in waves. I sincerely hope it's not battering at your shoreline every single day, but those waves of challenge, negativity, adversity will come fairly regularly. So we need coping mechanisms, we need strategies, things that keep our resilience levels, our energy in a good place, and our mindset empowered. And it isn't sufficient just to say, well, toughen up, stiff upper lip, keep moving forward. We need tangible, specific tools. And something that I always advocate, spend a lot of time anchoring in with clients, is the utilization of a journal. Something I came to relatively late in my leadership career, but again, it was one of the reflections around my recovery period from pneumonia of how can I be better placed to clear my head, to recover mentally, to refocus, to reprioritize where I was deploying my energy, my time, my resource. And I found that journaling was a particularly cathartic process. There's multiple ways that you can use a journal. I won't take up time going into them now, but if it's of interest, please do circle back and have a listen to episode 15 on the power of utilizing a journal. As I said at the start of this episode, this is all about prompting reflection, built on the feedback from the Lonely Leader community around the concept of redesigning our leadership and avoiding the pitfalls and the delayed decisions that people often advocate they have regretted delaying action on. So if I could leave you with a final episode to check out, it would be episode 33. Now, this is built around a poem called The Optimist Creed by Christian Larson. And in that, he makes a series of statements, pledges, if you will, about living a life, the best version of us. And I adapted that into turning them into high performance pledges. And I would love for you to listen to that, because if you are minded to look at that redesign, if the recent episodes have prompted you to think, well, how do I need to tweak, evolve what I do? What got me here might not be what's going to get me where I want to be, and therefore I'm open to the concept of a redesign, then everything we've talked about today has a dotted line back to that. How do we get better clarity? How are we going to take action to recover? Are we going to tap into specific habits like journaling? What are we doing to learn and to clear some of that mental pressure? How do we handle negative people? All of these things feed in. And then perhaps also listening to the powerful words of Christian Larson and giving yourself some high performance pledges to say, as part of my redesign, I want to embrace this and weave this into who I am, how I operate. I believe passionately that if you're able to do that, you will have a myriad of benefits. Your energy will change, your resilience will be enhanced, your mindset will be more empowered. And I think the collective endpoint is that you will find a high level of performance, both professionally and personally. And naturally, that gives us a higher level of fulfillment. So there are well over 100 episodes in the Lonely Leader archive now. All of them come from lived life experience, either myself or the clients that I have the privilege of working with, as I said earlier. But I hope this handful of episodes that I've signposted you towards today will be instrumental in helping you redesign, evolve, and continue to grow and develop and bring the best version of you to the fore in each and every leadership role that you enjoy. I wish you the very best of luck. Thanks for listening to the Lonely Leader podcast. I'd be very grateful if you could share and follow if the content resonates. And if you're looking for additional free resource to support your continued growth and development, then please do check out our social media and website details in the show notes. Remember, quality leadership on the outside must always start within.